My pregnant wife was in the ER having complications. The monitors were keeping our baby alive. Then HOA President Margaret walked in, complained about the beeping and unplugged my wife's life support equipment. She didn't know I'm a lawyer with security cameras recording everything. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. It was 2 a.m. when my pregnant wife Emma started screaming in pain. She was 8 months pregnant with our first baby, and something was terribly wrong. David, help me. Emma cried, doubling over in our bedroom. Something's wrong with the baby. I had never been so scared in my life. Emma was bleeding and the pain was so bad she could barely stand up. We're going to the hospital right now, I said, helping her to the car. The drive to Mercy General Hospital felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. Emma was crying and holding her belly, worried about our unborn son. What if we lose him? She whispered through her tears. We won't, I promised, though I was terrified too. Everything will be okay. When we got to the emergency room, the nurses immediately took Emma into a treatment room. They hooked her up to monitors to check both her heartbeat and the baby's heartbeat. The baby's heartbeat is irregular, Dr. Rodriguez told us. We need to monitor both of you very carefully. Emma was put on bed rest with strict orders not to move. The monitors were keeping track of our baby's condition every second. Any stress or movement could be dangerous right now, the doctor explained. The monitors will alert us if anything changes. I held Emma's hand as we listened to our baby's heartbeat on the machine. It was weak but steady. He's going to be okay, Emma said, trying to stay positive. Yes, he is, I agreed. We just need to stay calm and let the doctors take care of everything. But our peaceful moment was about to be destroyed by the last person we expected to see. Margaret Stevens was the HOA president of our neighborhood, Pine Valley Estates. She was a woman in her 50s who made everyone's life miserable with her constant complaints and power trips. Margaret had been harassing our family for months. She didn't like that we had painted our front door blue instead of the approved colors. She complained that our dog barked too loudly. She even tried to fine us for having flowers that were too colorful in our garden. But I never thought she would follow us to the hospital. At 3 a.m., while Emma was resting and the monitors were tracking our baby's heartbeat, Margaret Stevens walked into our hospital room. What are you doing here? I asked, shocked to see her. I'm here visiting my sister, Margaret said with her usual nasty attitude. But I saw your name on the patient list, and I wanted to talk to you about the violations at your property. Are you insane? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife is in the emergency room having pregnancy complications, and you want to talk about HOA business? The HOA doesn't stop just because you have personal problems, Margaret said coldly. Emma looked up weakly from her hospital bed. Please, Mrs. Stevens, I'm really sick. Can this wait? No, it cannot wait. You've been ignoring my notices for weeks. I stood up, furious. Get out. Now. I don't take orders from you, Margaret snapped. I have every right to discuss HOA business whenever I want. The monitors were beeping steadily, keeping track of Emma's condition and our baby's heartbeat. Emma was supposed to stay completely calm and still. But Margaret wasn't done making our nightmare worse. Since you won't listen to me about the violations, Margaret said, maybe you'll take me seriously when you get home and find your fines have doubled. Please leave us alone, Emma begged weakly. I'm scared about the baby. Your personal problems are not my concern, Margaret replied heartlessly. I was about to call security when Margaret did something that I still can't believe actually happened. She looked at all the medical equipment around Emma's bed with annoyance. All this beeping is giving me a headache, Margaret complained. And then, without any warning, she reached over and unplugged the main monitor that was tracking our baby's heartbeat. The room went silent. The steady beeping that had been reassuring us that our baby was okay suddenly stopped. What did you do? Emma screamed. I just wanted some quiet so we could talk, Margaret said casually, as if she hadn't just done something incredibly dangerous. Emma started crying hysterically. You could have killed my baby. I need those monitors. I was so shocked and angry that I couldn't even speak for a moment. This woman had just endangered my wife and unborn child. Plug it back in right now, I demanded. Don't shout at me, Margaret said calmly. I'll plug it back in when we're done talking. Emma was having a panic attack. David, I can't hear the baby's heartbeat. What if something's wrong? I rushed to plug the monitor back in, but Margaret stepped in front of me. We're having a conversation, she said firmly. The monitors can wait. Emma's panic was making everything worse. The stress was dangerous for both her and the baby, and without the monitors, we had no way to know if our son was okay. Please, Emma cried. I need to know my baby is alive. Your baby is fine, Margaret said dismissively. Stop being so dramatic. You don't know that, I shouted. Those monitors are keeping my family alive. I tried to push past Margaret to reach the monitor, but she blocked me again. Sit down and listen to what I have to say about your property violations, she demanded. Emma was sobbing now, her hands on her belly, terrified that something had happened to our baby while the monitors were off. I can't feel him moving, Emma whispered in terror. David, I can't feel the baby moving. That's when I completely lost control. Get away from my wife. I roared, pushing Margaret aside and frantically plugging the monitor back in. The machine came back to life, and after a few terrifying seconds, we heard our baby's heartbeat again. But it was weaker than before. The baby's in distress. I called out loudly, hoping a nurse would hear. Dr. Rodriguez rushed into the room. What happened? Why were the monitors off? She unplugged them. I pointed at Margaret, who was standing there like nothing had happened. I just needed a few minutes of quiet, Margaret said defensively. Dr. Rodriguez looked horrified. Ma'am, those monitors are life support equipment. Unplugging them could have killed this baby. That's ridiculous, Margaret replied. It was only for a few minutes. A few minutes without monitoring during a high-risk pregnancy can cause brain damage or death, the doctor explained angrily. Emma was crying uncontrollably. Is my baby okay? Did she hurt him? Dr. Rodriguez checked the monitors carefully. The baby's heartbeat is irregular now. We need to take you for an emergency ultrasound immediately. As they wheeled Emma away for emergency testing, she looked back at me with tears streaming down her face. Don't let her hurt anyone else, Emma whispered. I promised her I wouldn't. While Emma was getting emergency tests to make sure our baby was okay, I called hospital security. I need to report an assault, I told the security chief. Someone just endangered my wife and unborn child by unplugging life support equipment. That's a very serious accusation, sir. It's not an accusation. It's what happened. And I want to press charges. I also called the police. What Margaret had done wasn't just rude or inappropriate, it was criminal. When Officer Johnson arrived, I explained exactly what had happened. She unplugged medical monitoring equipment during a pregnancy emergency? Yes. My wife could have lost the baby because of what she did. Officer Johnson interviewed the nursing staff, who confirmed that the monitors had been unplugged and that this could have been fatal. We've never seen anything like this, Nurse Williams told the officer. No visitor has ever interfered with life support equipment before. Dr. Rodriguez also gave a statement. What this woman did was incredibly dangerous. Those monitors are the only way we can track the baby's condition during a crisis. Meanwhile, Margaret was in the waiting room, acting like she had done nothing wrong. This is all an overreaction, she told Officer Johnson. I barely touched anything. Ma'am, you unplugged life support equipment in a hospital. It was just beeping too loudly. I didn't think it was that important. Officer Johnson arrested Margaret on charges of reckless endangerment and interfering with medical equipment. As they led her away in handcuffs, Margaret was still complaining. This is ridiculous. I'm the HOA president. I was just trying to have a conversation. But I wasn't done with Margaret Stevens. Not even close. The first thing I did was request all the security footage from the hospital. As a lawyer, I knew that video evidence would be crucial. The hospital's security director, Mr. Chin, was very helpful. We have cameras in every room, he explained. Everything that happened was recorded. When I watched the footage, I felt sick. Seeing Margaret deliberately unplug Emma's monitors while my wife begged her to stop was horrifying. This is clear evidence of criminal behavior, I told Mr. Chin. Absolutely. We've never had anyone attack our medical equipment before. I also requested the medical records showing how Emma's condition and the baby's condition changed after the monitors were unplugged. Dr. Rodriguez provided detailed documentation. The baby went into distress immediately after monitoring stopped. This could have caused permanent damage. Fortunately, the emergency ultrasound showed that our baby was okay. But Emma had to stay in the hospital for 3 more days under observation. We were very lucky, Dr. Rodriguez told us. A few more minutes without monitoring could have been fatal. Emma was traumatized by what had happened. I keep thinking about what could have happened to our baby, she said through tears. Margaret is going to pay for what she did to us, I promised. As a lawyer, I knew exactly how to make sure Margaret faced the full consequences of her actions. I was going to destroy her in court. Over the next few weeks, I built the strongest legal case possible against Margaret Stevens. The criminal charges were just the beginning. I also filed a civil lawsuit for assault, emotional distress, and endangering our unborn child. This is one of the most clear-cut cases I've ever seen, District Attorney Williams told me. The video evidence is overwhelming. I gathered expert testimony from multiple doctors about how dangerous Margaret's actions had been. Unplugging fetal monitoring equipment during a pregnancy emergency is potentially fatal, Dr. Martinez explained in his statement. This could easily have killed both mother and baby. I also interviewed the hospital staff who had witnessed Margaret's behavior. She showed no concern for the patient's safety, Nurse Williams stated. She acted like the medical equipment was just an inconvenience to her. I discovered that Margaret had a history of inappropriate behavior as HOA president. She had harassed multiple families and exceeded her authority many times. She thinks she's above the law, complained Mr. Rodriguez, one of our neighbors. She's been terrorizing people for years. Mrs. Patterson shared how Margaret had tried to fine her for having visitors on a Sunday. She said family gatherings violated community noise ordinances, Mrs. Patterson explained. She made up rules that didn't exist. The Johnson family told me how Margaret had threatened to call child services because their children played outside after 6 p.m. She's completely out of control, Mr. Johnson said. What she did to your family was just the worst example of her behavior. News of Margaret's arrest spread quickly through our community and then to the local media. HOA president arrested for unplugging pregnant woman's life support, was the headline in the County Herald. The story went viral on social media. People were outraged that someone would endanger a pregnant woman and her baby over HOA business. This is the most heartless thing I've ever heard, read one comment with thousands of likes. How is this woman not in prison already? Asked another. Local TV news stations picked up the story. Channel 7 interviewed Drive Rodriguez about how dangerous Margaret's actions had been. In 30 years of medicine, I've never seen a visitor deliberately sabotage life support equipment, Dr. Rodriguez told the reporter. The story reached national news when it was shared by a popular Twitter account with millions of followers. HOA Karen tries to kill baby over paint color dispute, was trending for 3 days. Margaret hired an expensive lawyer who tried to control the damage, but it was impossible. The video evidence was too clear, and Margaret's actions were too shocking. My client made a mistake in judgment, her lawyer told reporters. But she never intended to hurt anyone. Nobody believed that defense. The video clearly showed Margaret deliberately unplugging life support equipment while Emma begged her to stop. As the trial date approached, I made sure I had every piece of evidence perfectly organized. The hospital security footage was the centerpiece of my case. It showed everything: Margaret entering our room, arguing with us, unplugging the monitors and refusing to plug them back in while Emma cried. The jury is going to be horrified when they see this, my colleague Attorney Davis told me. I also had medical testimony proving how dangerous Margaret's actions had been. Dr. Rodriguez would testify about the immediate danger to our baby. Dr. Martinez would explain the long-term damage that could have occurred. Nurse Williams would describe how shocked the medical staff had been. Emma was nervous about testifying, but she was determined to see justice done. I want other pregnant women to know they're safe in hospitals, Emma said. No one should ever have to go through what we went through. Margaret's lawyer tried to get the charges reduced, but District Attorney Williams refused. She endangered a pregnant woman and her unborn child, Williams stated. We're prosecuting to the fullest extent of the law. The public was overwhelmingly on our side. The hospital received hundreds of messages supporting Emma and condemning Margaret's actions. What happened to your family was unforgivable, one message read. That woman should never be allowed around pregnant women again. The courtroom was packed on the first day of Margaret's trial. Reporters, neighbors, and concerned citizens filled every seat. Margaret sat at the defendant's table looking nervous. Her expensive lawyer whispered to her constantly, but she looked like she knew she was in serious trouble. In my opening statement, I laid out exactly what Margaret had done. Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant deliberately unplugged life support equipment while my wife was having pregnancy complications. She could have killed my unborn son. I showed the jury a photo of Emma in the hospital bed with all the monitoring equipment. These machines were keeping my family alive. And the defendant unplugged them because she wanted to discuss paint color violations. Margaret's lawyer tried to argue that she didn't understand how important the equipment was. My client made an error in judgment, he claimed. She thought she was just turning off a noisy machine. but I was ready to prove that Margaret knew exactly what she was doing. The first witness was Dr. Rodriguez, who explained why the monitors were crucial. Without continuous monitoring, we can't detect if the baby goes into distress. During a pregnancy emergency, even a few minutes without monitoring can be fatal. In your medical opinion, how dangerous was it to unplug this equipment? It was potentially lethal. The defendant put both mother and baby at serious risk of death. The jury looked shocked. Margaret's face was getting redder by the minute. The moment I had been waiting for arrived when I presented the security footage to the jury. Your Honor, I would like to play the hospital security video for the jury. Margaret's lawyer objected, but the judge overruled him. The video is crucial evidence in this case. I set up the large screen so everyone in the courtroom could see clearly. This video shows exactly what happened in my wife's hospital room at 3 a.m. on the night in question. The courtroom fell silent as the footage began to play. The video showed Margaret entering our room. You could see Emma lying in the hospital bed, clearly sick and weak, with monitors beeping around her. The audio was clear. You could hear Margaret complaining about HOA violations while Emma begged her to leave them alone. Then came the moment that made everyone in the courtroom gasp. On the screen, clear as day, Margaret reached over and unplugged the main monitor. The beeping stopped. Emma started crying and begging for the monitor to be plugged back in. The video showed Margaret blocking me when I tried to reach the equipment. You could hear Emma sobbing, "I need to know my baby is alive." Several jury members were crying. Some looked angry. One woman covered her mouth in shock. As you can see, I told the jury, the defendant deliberately unplugged life support equipment while my pregnant wife begged her to stop. Margaret's lawyer looked defeated. There was no way to explain away what everyone had just seen. Emma's testimony was the most powerful moment of the trial. Mrs. Thompson, please tell the jury what happened that night. Emma spoke clearly despite her obvious emotion. I was having pregnancy complications. The doctor said any stress could hurt my baby. I was supposed to stay calm and let the monitors track his heartbeat. What happened when the defendant entered your room? She started yelling about paint colors and HOA violations. I begged her to leave because I was scared about my baby. Emma's voice broke as she continued. Then she unplugged the monitor that was tracking my baby's heartbeat. I couldn't hear if he was alive anymore. How did that make you feel? Terrified. I thought my baby was going to die. I was crying and begging her to plug it back in, but she wouldn't do it. The jury was completely focused on Emma's testimony. You could hear people crying in the courtroom. What happened to your baby when the monitoring stopped? He went into distress. His heartbeat became irregular. The doctors said a few more minutes could have caused brain damage or death. Margaret's lawyer tried to cross-examine Emma, but it only made things worse for his client. Mrs. Thompson, isn't it true that you had been ignoring HOA notices? I was 8 months pregnant and having complications. Paint colors were not my priority. But you did violate HOA rules? Nothing I did justified endangering my baby's life. The lawyer realized he was making Margaret look even worse and ended his questions quickly. I called several medical experts to testify about how dangerous Margaret's actions had been. Dr. Martinez, a specialist in high-risk pregnancies, explained the science to the jury. Fetal monitoring during pregnancy emergencies is critical. The baby's heart rate tells us if he's getting enough oxygen. What happens if monitoring is interrupted? We can't detect fetal distress. The baby could die and we wouldn't know until it's too late. In this case, how long were the monitors disconnected? Approximately 4 minutes. That's long enough for serious complications to develop. Nurse Williams testified about the hospital's response. In 20 years of nursing, I've never seen anyone deliberately interfere with life support equipment. We were shocked by the defendant's behavior. How did the medical staff react? We immediately reported it to security and administration. What she did was incredibly dangerous and completely unprecedented. The hospital's security director testified about the video evidence. Our cameras captured everything. The defendant clearly knew she was unplugging medical equipment because the patient and her husband both told her to stop. Margaret's lawyer had no real defense against this overwhelming evidence. His only strategy was to argue that Margaret didn't intend to cause harm. My client was trying to resolve a community dispute. She didn't realize how serious the medical situation was. But I had evidence to destroy that argument too. In my cross-examination of Margaret, I exposed her complete lack of remorse and her disturbing mindset. Mrs. Stevens, when you entered the hospital room, what did you see? A woman in a hospital bed. A pregnant woman having medical complications? Yes. With medical equipment monitoring her condition? There were some machines, yes. Machines that were beeping to indicate they were working? Yes, they were quite loud. And you decided to unplug those machines? I just wanted to have a conversation without all the noise. Even though the patient begged you not to? Margaret hesitated. She was being dramatic. The jury looked disgusted by her callous response. Mrs. Stevens, did you know that unplugging medical equipment could endanger the baby? I thought it was just monitoring equipment. Just monitoring equipment? Do you understand that monitoring equipment in a hospital is life support equipment? I don't know much about medical things. But when the patient told you the equipment was tracking her baby's heartbeat, you understood that, didn't you? Yes. And you still refused to plug it back in? I wanted to finish our conversation first. The courtroom was completely silent. Margaret had just admitted that she put her HOA business above a baby's life. I showed the jury Margaret's history of harassment and abuse of power as HOA president. You've fined families for having the wrong color flowers, haven't you? Community standards are important. You've threatened to call child services on families whose children played outside? Noise violations are serious. You followed my family to a hospital to discuss paint colors while my wife was having pregnancy complications? HOA business doesn't stop for personal problems. By the time I was done with her, Margaret had revealed herself to be a heartless person who cared more about power and control than human life. The jury deliberated for only 90 minutes before reaching their verdict. Has the jury reached a verdict? We have, Your Honor. The foreman stood up. On the charge of reckless endangerment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of interfering with medical equipment, we find the defendant guilty. On the charge of assault, we find the defendant guilty. Margaret started crying as each guilty verdict was read. The judge was clearly angry as he prepared to sentence her. Mrs. Stevens, your actions were not only criminal but morally reprehensible. You endangered a pregnant woman and her unborn child over a trivial neighborhood dispute. Your Honor, I'm sorry. I didn't mean. You deliberately unplugged life support equipment while a patient begged you to stop. Your intent is clear from your own testimony. The judge sentenced Margaret to 2 years in prison, plus 5 years of probation during which she was banned from serving in any HOA capacity. Furthermore, you will pay full restitution to the victims for their medical costs and emotional trauma. Margaret was led away in handcuffs, still crying and claiming it was all a misunderstanding. But the jury and the judge had seen the truth. Margaret was a bully who had finally gone too far. Our civil lawsuit against Margaret was settled for a significant amount that would help cover Emma's extended medical care and therapy. The HOA board immediately removed Margaret from her position and issued a formal apology to our family and all the other families she had harassed. The board deeply regrets the actions of former President Stevens, the new president announced. We are implementing new policies to ensure this never happens again. All of Margaret's arbitrary fines and violations were reversed. Families received refunds for money they had paid under her illegal rules. Emma gave birth to our healthy son 3 weeks later. We named him Michael and he was perfect in every way. He's here and he's safe. Emma cried happy tears as she held our baby. That's all that matters. The hospital created new security protocols to prevent anyone from interfering with medical equipment again. What happened to your family led to important safety improvements, Dr. Rodriguez told us. No other family will go through what you experienced. Our story became a cautionary tale about HOA abuse of power. Other communities used our case to reform their own governing systems. Your courage to fight back helped families everywhere, Attorney Davis told me. Margaret served 18 months in prison before being released on parole. She moved away from our community and was never involved with an HOA again. Our neighborhood became peaceful and friendly under new leadership. Families could enjoy their homes without fear of harassment or arbitrary rules. It's amazing how much better everything is without one toxic person, our neighbor Mrs. Johnson observed. Emma recovered fully from the trauma, though she sometimes had nightmares about that terrible night in the hospital. I still can't believe she actually unplugged the monitors, Emma would say. Who does that to a pregnant woman? Someone who cares more about power than people, I would reply. But she lost that power forever. Michael grew into a happy, healthy toddler who loved playing in our front yard with our inappropriate blue door and 2 colorful flowers. This is what our neighborhood should be, Emma said, watching Michael play with the other children. A place where families can be happy and safe. The security footage from that night was used in law school classes as an example of clear criminal evidence. Your case is teaching future lawyers how to build strong cases, my old professor told me. But more importantly, our story was helping other families stand up to HOA bullies and abuse of power. 5 years later, our family has grown and thrived in our peaceful neighborhood. Michael has a little sister now, and both children grow up knowing they're safe and protected. Emma became an advocate for pregnant women's rights and hospital safety. She speaks at medical conferences about the importance of protecting vulnerable patients. No pregnant woman should ever feel unsafe in a hospital, she tells audiences. Medical equipment is there to save lives, and no one has the right to interfere with it. I continue practicing law, with a special focus on cases involving abuse of authority and community harassment. The hospital where Michael was born now has Emma's story prominently displayed in their training materials. This case reminds all staff and visitors that medical equipment is never to be touched by unauthorized persons, reads the sign in every room. Margaret Stevens became a symbol of everything wrong with unchecked HOA power. Her mugshot is still shared online whenever people discuss HOA reform. Our neighborhood thrives under fair and reasonable leadership. The community garden where Margaret once cited people for unauthorized plants, now hosts family festivals and celebrations. Look at how beautiful this place is when people aren't afraid, Emma often says. The blue door that started Margaret's harassment campaign is still blue. In fact, many neighbors painted their doors bright colors in solidarity. This is what freedom looks like, our neighbor Mr. Rodriguez said, gesturing to the rainbow of colorful doors on our street. Michael, now 5 years old, sometimes asks about the bad lady who tried to hurt him before he was born. She's gone now, I tell him. And she can never hurt anyone again. Because you stopped her, Daddy? Because good people work together to stop her. That's how we keep each other safe. The courtroom video of Margaret's conviction is still viewed thousands of times whenever someone searches for HOA justice or karma in action. But for our family, the real victory isn't Margaret's punishment. It's the safe, loving community we've built where children can grow up without fear. Every time I see Michael playing happily in our yard, I'm reminded that standing up to bullies isn't just about winning. It's about protecting the innocent and making sure evil people can't hurt others. Margaret Stevens thought she could endanger my wife and baby over paint colors. Instead, she lost everything and taught the world that some lines should never be crossed. And in our neighborhood, where families now live in peace and children play freely, her defeat serves as a permanent reminder that bullies always lose in the end. The monitors that Margaret unplugged that terrible night were meant to protect life. And that's exactly what they did. They protected my family and led to justice that protects all families. Sometimes the evidence is so clear, the evil so obvious, that justice becomes inevitable. And playing that footage for the jury live wasn't just presenting evidence. It was showing the world that when good people stand together, they can defeat any evil. No matter how powerful the bully thinks they are.